Hola, pero no cualquier hola. Bienvenido a Este, donde el lujo se mezcla con la furia. Y los coches no solo se ven, se sienten. Aquí no verás caras. Verás motores que hablan por sí solos. Cada línea, cada rugido, cada sombra, está hecha para dejar huella. Así que ponte cómodo. O mejor, ajusta el cinturón. Porque estás a punto de entrar en un universo donde el poder no se muestra, se impone. Esto es Este. Y aquí, los coches rugen.
Here are 101 facts about Dodge, aka the most frat boy crazy brand out there. We're also going to talk about Plymouth since they were pretty much the same thing. Number 1. When describing reliable and tough vehicles, the word dependability is often thrown around by automakers. Well, that word was actually invented by Dodge. You see, back in 1914, Theodore McManus, who worked in Dodge's marketing department, thought the word dependable was way too boring. So McManus started using dependability in Dodge's promotional campaigns, which quickly caught on. In fact, dependability became so commonly used that it was put into the dictionary in the late 30s. Number 2. The Dodge Demon only came with one seat as standard, and yes, it was obviously the driver's seat. With that said, you could still get the passenger seat as an optional extra, and that option cost $1 single. But wait, what if you wanted to transport more than one person in your car? Well, if you were a baller and money wasn't an issue, you could pay another $1 to get rear seats put in. And it didn't end there. For another $1, Dodge would give you their drag racing kit, which included a performance control module that gave you a 32 horsepower boost, drag wheels and tires, tools, and a lot more. I think Dodge should really consider going on the Caleb Hammer show, because this is not financially smart. Number 3. The Challenger has cup holders inside the engine bay, so you could have a beer while working on your car. This solidifies the fact that it's a car made for bros, by bros. Number 4. Have you ever wondered why NASCARs don't have any crazy spoilers or splitters? Well, that's all Dodge's fault. Let me explain. Back in 1968, Dodge announced their all-new Charger 500, which was supposed to be the fastest car in the sport thanks to a little thing they had just discovered called aerodynamics. But before they could bask in the glory of their new groundbreaking discovery, Ford decided to steal their moment with the Torino Talladega, which was far superior aerodynamically, and it ran laps around the Charger 500. But instead of crying about it, Dodge decided to go all in by convincing Daddy Chrysler to send a few scientists from their rocket division to Dodge's racing facilities, because the race to the checkered flag was more important than the race to the moon. And after a few months of development, Dodge came out with the Charger Daytona in 1969, which was fast as hell, and it became the first car to ever hit 200 miles per hour in NASCAR, thanks to its flushed rear window, pointy front end, and massive 23-inch tall rear spoiler. The Daytona was so good that it pretty much won every single race it entered. This whole thing was really exciting for the fans, and everyone thought the 1970 season would be an all-out war. But before that could happen, NASCAR officials came out and pretty much banned all aero from the sport, because they thought that it was only a matter of time before the manufacturers all went crazy, making the sport more dangerous than it already was. And just like that, the legend of the Daytona ended as quickly as it started. Number 5. The logo of the Demon 170 has a 170 neck tattoo, because the original Demon logo was nowhere near crazy enough to represent just how stupidly absurd this 1,000 horsepower muscle car actually is. Number 6. The first generation Dodge Viper didn't have door handles. Seriously, the only way you could get in was to reach into the car and open the door from the inside, which you could do at any time, because the car didn't have a roof, windows, or door locks. Number 7. Let's be honest, the only reason we love Dodge is their powerful and loud HEMI V8s. But technically, Dodge hasn't put a HEMI in a car since 2003. I know, hear me out. The name HEMI is short for hemispherical, which refers to the shape of the combustion chamber. But back in 2003, Dodge flattened their combustion chambers to make their engines more efficient. Now, I'm no scientist, but if you remove the hemispherical shape of a hemispherical engine, do you really have a HEMI? Number 8. Dodge's brand new logo, which was announced back in 2022, is actually 62 years old, and it's called the Fratzog. which means nothing. It was a random name that one engineer came up with as a placeholder until they could find a better name. But apparently, no one was able to come up with a better name than Fratzog, so they decided to just keep it. Number 9. If you go full throttle in a Hellcat, you can drain the entire tank in just 15 minutes. Number 10. In the year 1900, John Francis Dodge and Horace Elgin Dodge established the Dodge Brothers Company to manufacture parts for other car companies, which turned out to be really lucrative, especially due to their partnership with Ford, because at that time, Ford had just started selling the Model T, which was the first mass-produced car in the world, meaning the Dodge brothers were making a crap ton of parts every single day. But their relationship went sour really fast, because Henry Ford suspected that the brothers wanted to take what they learned from Ford to start making their own cars, which was especially bad since Henry Ford chose to pay them with shares in the company instead of cash, meaning that if the brothers sold their shares, Henry Ford would basically be funding their venture, while also diluting his position in his own company. So he started going on the offensive, and he threatened to start another company to go out of giving the brothers their shares. In response, John and Horace took Henry to court, winning the case and forcing Henry to pay them $25 million in shares, which was more than enough for the brothers to start selling their own cars in 1914. Number 11. In 1915, General George S. Patton of the United States Army used 3 Dodges to attack a major figure in the Mexican guerrilla army, which was a massive deal, because that was the first ever time a motorized vehicle was used in combat. A couple of months later, the first ever tank was invented. Number 12. In 2004, Dodge offered the SRT-10 package for the Ram 1500, which included sporty wheels, bumpers, a fixed spoiler on what was supposed to be a working bed, and the V10 from the Viper. But what's funny is that option cost $22,000, while the truck itself also cost $22,000. I've never seen a package cost the same as what the package was applied to. Number 13. Now, if you've ever unfortunately been surrounded by Dodge people, you will notice the word Mopar being thrown around like crazy, sometimes even when they're talking about their love lives. Well, Mopar is actually short for Chrysler Motor Parts, and the word Mopar itself was first used on antifreeze bottles, which was quite fitting since antifreeze was invented by Chrysler. Number 14. Plymouth paid Warner Brothers $50,000 to use the name Roadrunner and the horn from the cartoon. Number 15. Dodge has a long history in Hollywood, and in the 60s and 70s, it seemed like there wasn't a good movie or show without a Dodge in it. But one franchise in particular stood out, the Dukes of Hazzard, which really helped Dodge from a marketing standpoint, especially since the orange Charger used in the show, the General Lee, pretty much became the main character. But if we're being honest, the Dukes of Hazzard hurt the Charger more than anything, because during the 7-season run of the show, they went through hundreds of Chargers. Like, they were destroying a Charger every week, and they pretty much created a shortage of Chargers across Georgia and the surrounding states, which is where the show was filmed. At some point, it got so bad that the producers would ride around in helicopters looking for cars to buy. But they didn't stop there. When Chargers became more expensive due to them almost going extinct, they started using AMC ambassadors, which kind of looked like Chargers from some specific angles. But thankfully, right as they created a shortage of ambassadors, the show was canceled. We don't know how many cars were destroyed during the show, but that number is estimated to be around 400, although we do know that only 17 examples survived. Number 16. Now let's say you're driving and you need to do something really stupid really quick, and you want to be in the best gear. Well, on a Dodge, all you have to do is pull and hold the downshift button, and the car will automatically put you into the optimum gear for the perfect power band. Number 17. The Ram TRX has an outline of a T-Rex eating a raptor in the engine bay. Number 18. The Dodge Caravan was the first minivan in the world, and it single-handedly created the minivan segment. But funny enough, this van was originally supposed to be built by Ford. You see, this car was the brainchild of Hal Sperlich and Lee Iacocca, and yes, that's the same Lee that was responsible for the Mustang. Anyways, back when they were working at Ford, they pitched the idea of what they called the Magic Wagon to Henry Ford II, the grandson of Henry Ford, and it was pitched as the ultimate family vehicle. But Henry outright rejected it, mostly because he and Lee didn't really see eye to eye. And later in 1978, Henry Ford fired Lee over their disagreements. That's when Chrysler took him. But this time, Lee was the CEO, so the moment Chrysler became financially stable, he had the Caravan built in 1984, and the rest is history. Number 19. During the production of the Demon, Dodge decided to skip production number 666 to avoid creating a bigger resale market for a single customer, since that number is considered by many to be the number of the devil. Number 20. In the late 80s, Bob Lutz, Chrysler's executive vice president, was driving his 1985 AC Cobra, and that's when he got the idea to build a car that's just as crazy. But he knew that a car like that wouldn't get built if logic got in the way. So he assembled a team of madmen and basically told them to do whatever they wanted. He also instructed them to never create focus groups or tell Chrysler what they were doing. Sometime later, the team gave Bob the sketches for a V10 manual supercar called the Viper. And surprisingly, Lutz hated it, because he pretty much wanted a carbon copy of the Cobra. But since he promised the team complete freedom in the beginning, he had to approve the design. A few months later, the first prototype was built, and it was now up to Bob to get the Viper into production by pitching it to Lee Iacocca. But instead of pitching it in a boring meeting, he decided to take a chance and put Lee behind the driver's seat. After thrashing the car around the track for half an hour, Lee turned to Bob and told him, "Well, what are you waiting for?" And just like that, the Viper was approved and put into production in 1992. Number 21. Ram owners are the worst drivers on the road. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. And I have receipts. In 2021, a study made by LendingTree found that drivers of Ram pickups are responsible for most accidents, DUIs, and traffic violations on the road. Now, if you're a Ram owner, you're probably calling BS. Well, listen to this. Tesla and Subaru owners came second and third. You can't argue now, can ya? Number 22. In 1968, Dodge built a concept of the Charger that had no roof because they wanted to experiment with different body styles. Now that's normal. What's not normal is the fact that it was the car with no name. Like, that was its name. The car with no name. Because apparently, they forgot to give it a name when they were developing it. Number 23. 2023 was the last year Dodge made manuals, and they haven't, nor will they ever, sell cars with manuals ever again. Number 24. Before building cars, the Dodge brothers built bicycles. They even patented and invented the first dirt-resistant bicycle bearing in 1896, which is something we still use to this day. Number 25. The first generation Viper was as bare bones as it gets, and we're not just talking about door handles. The Viper didn't have ABS, traction control, stability control, or any form of safety aids. They were actually so dangerous that over 30% of them were totaled on their way home from the dealership. Also, over 75% of them were involved in some sort of accident within the first week of being purchased. But the danger didn't end there. If you somehow managed to not total your Viper, you would live long enough to get the snake bite, which is what their owners called burning your legs with their side pipes. And it wasn't no joke. The snake bite was so common and Dodge received so many complaints that the exhausts were relocated to the back in 1996. Number 26. In the late 60s, Dodge was really looking for a campaign that would go viral, but instead of going the cool route, they decided to go punny, and the result was the Dart Swinger in 1969, which was meant for the smart swingers. By the way, swinger technically refers to a person who is lively, exciting, and fashionable, but most of us know it as a category in, well, you know. Anyways, believe it or not, this campaign was somewhat successful, but it slowly became less and less effective as people were ridiculed for it, forcing Dodge to kill that campaign a couple of years later. Number 27. This is the Dodge La Femme, and it's the first car to be exclusively built for women. By the way, La Femme is French for the woman. Dodge built this car in 1955 because women now had money, since they were entering the workforce and becoming more independent. So Dodge thought, what do strong, independent women love? Pink cars with pink interiors that have makeup compartments and purses attached to their seats. Now you're probably thinking, wow, that's stupid. And apparently, the women they were trying to sell this thing to agreed. That's why the La Femme was a massive failure, and any woman would have told them that. But no one did. because not one single woman was involved in the making of this car. The La Femme was basically what some dudes thought chicks wanted. Number 28. Now, rebadging is not a foreign concept, and just like everyone else, Dodge has rebadged some cars. But usually, rebadging cars requires changing the actual badges. Well, apparently, Dodge didn't feel like doing that for the Dodge Attitude. Yes, that's technically a Dodge, and yes, it still has Hyundai badges. You can't make this up. Number 29. The Dodge Viper was the first ever production car with the V10, and the Magnum V10 used in the Ram 2500 and 3500 was the first mass-produced V10 in the world. Number 30. The 1932 Dodge 6 was the first car to have Chrysler's new invention, rubber engine mounts. Number 31. Dodge used to sell adult toys, and no, not the kind your mom uses. Their adult toys were fun V8 trucks. Dodge built these things from 1970 to 1980, and they called them adult toys because they were stupid muscle trucks that kind of acted like they were hot-rodded from factory. The best thing about these ridiculous trucks was their names, which were the Street Van, the Warlock, and I kid you not, the Dodge Dude. Their marketing team's headquarters must have looked and smelled like an arcade. Number 32. If you leave your key in the trunk of a Dodge and close it, the car will automatically open the trunk. And trust me, that's a great safety feature. I wish I had that feature when my key was stuck in the trunk and I was stranded for about an hour. Number 33. The street racing scene was massive in Detroit back in the 70s, especially since that's where the Big Three were located. And when I say it was massive, I really do mean it. Pretty much everyone and their grandma raced after midnight. But one car in particular stood out. A blacked-out 1970 Dodge Challenger with a black gator roof. This car stood out because it had a habit of winning every race it took part in. But unlike other racers at that time, when the race was over, the Challenger didn't stop for praise or applause. It just drove off, never to be seen again for months. Soon the legend of the Black Ghost was born. Nobody knew who drove the car, but whoever did sure knew how to drive. This went on for years. The Black Ghost would come in, prove it was the king, and then leave. But after a while, it never came back. The tales of the Black Ghost lived among people for decades, and it was surrounded by a cloud of mystery. Well, we now know that this car was owned by a guy called Godfrey Qualls, a car nut who would get in a lot of trouble if he got caught, because at that time, he was an active Detroit police officer. We also learned that Qualls only stopped racing because he rejoined the US Army as a Green Beret in 1977. Years later, in 2008, Godfrey was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which is why he decided to sign off the car to his son, Gregory, and then proceeded to tell him the car's full history. Jeffrey sadly passed away in 2015, but his son wanted the whole world to know how cool his hero was, so he unveiled the car to the public in 2017 along with its story. Later in 2023, Dodge decided to build a special edition Black Ghost Challenger by taking a red eye, blacking it out, and adding a gator skin roof just like the original car in honor of Mr. Qualls. Rest in peace, sir, and thank you for your service. Number 34. The Dodge brothers had such a stellar reputation for quality that when they announced they would start building cars in 1914, over 22,000 businesses applied to become official dealers of Dodge. By the way, Dodge hadn't even built a single car at that point. Number 35. Dodge photoshopped the playground behind the Dodge Caravan in their manuals because apparently it wasn't possible to take an actual picture in front of a real playground for a car that was built to transport children. Number 36. Dodge actually worked with Carroll Shelby on multiple projects, building cars like the Shelby Charger and Shelby Durango. But their coolest car, in my opinion, was the Omni GLH, which was built to rival the VW Rabbit in 1984. By the way, GLH was short for Goes Like Hell, which it sure did, thanks to its 2.2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, and its super light body which only weighed 2,000 pounds. But I don't think anyone loved this car as much as Carroll himself. In fact, he loved it so much that when Dodge ended its production in 1986, he cut a deal with them and bought the last 500 units, which he then proceeded to upgrade even more, bumping its power from 146 horsepower to 175, while also improving its handling, giving it a 0 to 60 time of 6.5 seconds. And you might be wondering, what was the new version called? It was called the GLHS, which stood for Goes Like Hell Some More. God, I love this guy. Anyways, this little go-kart was so fast and well-balanced that it outran the GT350 and Ferrari 308. Oh, and they only came in black. Not sure why. Number 37. The Demon was so powerful that to buy one, you had to sign a waiver that protected Dodge from being sued if you killed yourself or anyone else in the process of driving one. Number 38. The term Scat Pack was originally introduced in the 60s for Dodge's performance models, with scat being a very popular slang for get lost, and pack being a play on Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack. But nowadays, Scat Pack is only designated to models that can run a quarter-mile time of under 14 seconds. Number 39. Fluid-filled tubes. And no, that's not me referencing your child support making wands. I'm actually referring to this thing, which every Viper has. Now, to understand what this is, we have to go back to 1987, when BMW struck a deal with General Electric to have them design a headlight for the quirky little Z1, because BMW was too busy designing these doors. Anyways, General Electric soon finished the prototype of the headlights, which came with these leveling tubes for testing and fitting. But just before the Z1 went into production, BMW backed out and decided that they no longer wanted them. Years later, Dodge approached General Electric looking for headlights for the Viper, and they wanted something really cheap, because they were on an extremely tight budget. That's when they were presented with the Z1's original headlights, which were perfect for Dodge, because not only were they the right shape, they were also really cheap, especially since Dodge decided to keep the leveling tubes of the prototype, allowing them to save $2 per headlight. Number 40. In 1938, Plymouth invented the column shifter. Number 41. Dodge actually built V10 Challengers in 2011, but they weren't just some special edition cash grabs. No, they were full factory-spec professional drag cars that made 900 horsepower, thanks to their naturally aspirated 8.4-liter V10s. Now, if you look closely, you might have noticed that this car doesn't have windshield wipers, and that's because it didn't need them since it wasn't street legal. Dodge only made 70 units, and they all came with drag tires, 2-speed transmissions, and factory-installed roll bars. By the way, the roll bars were built to meet NHRA regulations because the drag pack went down the quarter mile in 9.4 seconds at 143 miles per hour, making it the world's fastest naturally aspirated drag car. Now, if you think that's crazy, listen to this. Dodge made another Challenger drag pack in 2021, and this newer version had a 5.8-liter V8 making 630 horsepower. But don't be fooled by the small horsepower figure, because this car ran the quarter mile in 7.5 seconds from the factory. Number 42. Most people believe the Ram TRX got its name from the Tyrannosaurus Rex, but nope, Dodge picked that name because they had to, since the team forgot to take their list of names to Dodge's legal department in time, meaning the lawyers couldn't vet and copyright the names before production, so they ended up just straight up asking legal to give them whatever they had, and the only good name that came up was TRX, which was an off-road package Dodge used to offer on their old pickups. Number 43. The Dodge Demon was the first production car to come equipped with a trans brake. And yes, there's a joke in there somewhere, but we don't have the balls to say it. No pun intended. Anyways, trans brakes allow you to engage both forward and reverse gears simultaneously, meaning you won't have to use your brakes to launch the car, which is something Dodge really needed since the Demon made over 800 horsepower and 770 pound-feet of torque. Number 44. Many people to this day are confused about the decision to separate Ram from Dodge, since they're clearly still the same brand. Well, that decision was actually made by Mercedes in 2009 because they owned Chrysler, and they saw that the truck market was growing at a rapid pace. Mercedes also told Dodge to come up with a new logo, since they were giving the Ram head logo to Ram. Number 45. The Dodge brothers both tragically passed away in 1920 after catching the Spanish flu in New York City while attending an auto show. John passed away first in January at age 55, and Horace passed away in December at age 52. Later in 1928, Chrysler bought Dodge for $170 million, which is around $3.2 billion in today's money. Number 46. A couple of years ago, Dodge started offering the Power Dollars program, and the way it worked was very simple. They would offer you a $10 discount per horsepower, meaning if you bought a 710 horsepower Durango, you got a $7,100 discount. This campaign was a massive success, and it increased Dodge's sales by around 20%. Number 47. In the 90s, the Ram van became very popular among Japanese moto racers, simply because they were big, powerful, and cheap. But as you might know, Japanese people love racing everything, so naturally, the moto riders started battling to see who has the fastest van, and it became a tradition to finish an event by racing in the van you drove home in. This soon became a popular underground sport in Japan called Dajiban, which is Japanese for Dodge van. And to this day, hundreds of vans are purchased and transported to Japan every year, where they're used as extremely sketchy race cars. Number 48. Trucks weren't the only things that got the Viper treatment at Dodge, so did this thing. Yes, that's a motorcycle with an 8.4-liter V10. The Tomahawk, which you have to admit is a perfect name for this thing, was built in 2004 as a limited-run vehicle, mostly because Dodge couldn't get it to be road legal, which isn't a surprise considering the fact that this all-wheel drive, all-aluminum bike made 500 horsepower. Only 10 units were built and they're currently worth around $600,000. Number 49. Modern side view mirrors all have the same safety feature, where they fold in and out so they wouldn't break when you bumped into stuff. But for some stupid reason, the mirrors of the Challenger rotate up and down, meaning they would break instantly upon impact. Number 50. Impressively, and unlike other brands, Dodge entered their cool phase in the last couple of years, and that's all thanks to this madman, Tim Kuniskis, who first started as a sales representative in 1992 and then quickly rose to the position of CEO in 2011. Tim soon proved himself to be the best man for the job, because unlike other CEOs, he lived and breathed cars, which is why he understood that cool cars could only be built if the engineers were left alone. So he basically let them do their own thing and allowed them to let their inner kids come out. And that's why we have the Demon 170. Number 51. Believe it or not, the Charger is actually pretty damn aerodynamic. In fact, it has the same drag coefficients as the Charger Daytona, which also means it's more aerodynamic than the Challenger. Number 52. The Dodge Viper was discontinued in 2017, but contrary to what most people believe, it wasn't discontinued for low sales or emissions. It was discontinued because Dodge didn't feel like spending a bunch of money on installing side curtain airbags, which were becoming mandatory at that time. Number 53. Dodge has officially announced that they will stop making Hemis and V8s altogether in 2025. Number 54. Dodge built 18-wheelers from 1973 to 1975. They were called Dodge Bighorns. Only 261 units were built, and less than 150 remain. Also, the Ram head logo was specifically created for this lineup. Number 55. The name Demon was originally introduced on the Dart in 1971 to showcase a new, cheap, eco-friendly lineup of cars, with their tagline being, "When it comes to gas economy, the Demon is a regular saint." But this campaign failed because people in the 70s were more conservative, and driving to church in a Demon was frowned upon. With that said, I'm glad they didn't go with the original name they had chosen, which was the Beaver. Number 56. The third-gen Viper ACR has a line that goes down the whole car. Dodge even stitched a line on the leather steering wheel to not disturb its design. They even went as far as painting the mount of the rear spoiler, although we couldn't find what that line actually meant. Number 57. If your Dodge has push-button start and the battery on your key fob runs out, you can still start it by pushing the ignition with the key. Number 58. What do you get when you mix an E-Class with an S-Class? Well, the answer is this. I'm not joking. That's how Mercedes built the chassis for the Challenger in 2008, which remained unchanged up until this thing came along. Number 59. Last year, an unnamed active-duty U.S. military soldier purchased an F8 Green Demon 170, which he bought at a steep $50,000 markup, because you know things were crazy back then. Anyways, he bought the car at a Mississippi dealer and arranged to have it delivered to his family, since at that time he was deployed overseas. A couple of days later, as the soldier was scrolling through Facebook, he came across a post of an F8 Green 170 that was purchased right after he bought his car. So he messaged the guy telling him that he also recently bought one. And as they were talking, they figured out that they both paid for the same car, like the exact same one. It turns out the Mississippi dealer had sold the car again for an even higher markup. This story soon went public, but instead of admitting to their scummy business practices, the dealership started calling the soldier a liar and a clout chaser. And to make things worse, the soldier couldn't order a new one because the 170's production had already ended at that point. But just as the soldier was losing hope, Tim stepped in and decided to make things right by gifting him one of the 40 cars that Dodge had reserved to be handed out to their best performing dealerships. And not just that, Tim had the car repainted at the factory in the same F8 green of the original car, and even matched its specs. Oh, but again, we're not done. Tim went out of his way and told Jay Leno about the whole thing. And that's when Jay offered to personally hand over the car to the soldier in his garage, and even gave the soldier a tour of the place. The Brotherhood of Muscle is strong with this one. Number 60. Dodge trucks are famous for their reliable Cummins diesel engines, but fun fact, they didn't build them. They were actually built by Clessie Cummins, a mechanic, and J. Irwin Miller, a banker, in 1919. Dodge only started using the Cummins in 1989 because they couldn't afford to build their own engine. By the way, the Cummins is the only truck engine to also be used in heavy equipment. Number 61. When Dodge announced the absolutely bonkers Durango Hellcat in 2021, they promised their customers that it would be a one-year-only model. But the demand was so high that Dodge just kept building them. That's why owners of the original Durango Hellcats have filed a class action lawsuit against Dodge for $5 million. We're curious to see how it turns out. Number 62. In the 70s, Dodge used dartboards to advertise the Dart. Real creative, guys. Number 63. In 1915, Dodge announced the first ever winter car. Now you might be wondering, what the hell is a winter car? Well, it's a car that works like a roadster with a convertible roof in the summer and then transforms into a touring car with detachable windows and a solid roof for the winter. I know it sounds stupid now, but it was actually a big deal in the early 1900s, because Dodge was the first brand to be able to meet the regulatory requirements for both roadsters and tourers all at once. Number 64. There are more Cummins engines in the Million Mile Club than any other engine. Number 65. The headlight of the Challenger works as a cold air intake, which is really cool. What isn't is the fact that the intakes on the passenger side are all fake. Number 66. Dodge has always played favorites with Mexico, and they've sold a lot of cars there that they would never sell in the US. One of the cars is the two-door Dodge Durango. And don't be fooled by the small number of doors, it's still a 3-row SUV. Yes, they actually tried to sell 3-row two-door SUVs, which makes no sense. It's the auto industry's equivalent of a vegan steak. Yes, that exists. Number 67. The Ram TRX has the world's second worst fuel economy at 12 miles per gallon, and it was only beat out by the Bugatti Chiron Supersport. Number 68. The Dodge Viper GTC had 24,000 racing stripe color options, 8,000 exterior color options, 11 wheels, 16 interior trims, 7 aero packages, 3 brake packages, and 4 different suspension setups, meaning that you could customize your car 25 million different ways. Number 69. The new Ram trucks have active noise suppression, and they use 4 speakers to pump specific sound waves into the cabin to drown out outside noise, because apparently, work trucks now need to be quiet. Number 70. Dodge built and sold cars under the Dodge Brothers name up until the 30s, but the Brothers part of the name was later dropped by Chrysler, because they thought it made the brand sound like some small family-owned operation. And for once, they were right. Number 71. From 1980 to 1993, Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth used the same exact logo, with Chrysler and Plymouth's logos being blue, while Dodge's logo was red. With that said, the color thing really didn't matter, because all the cars used chrome-plated badges. Number 72. Dodge builds dangerous cars. I don't think anyone would argue with that statement. But back in the 60s, they built a car that was so dangerous, even they were nervous. Let me ease you into it. Back in 1968, Dodge decided to build the factory-spec drag car, kind of like what they recently did with the drag pack. And the car they came up with was the LO23 HEMI Dart, which had a 420 horsepower 7-liter V8. This car didn't come with any safety or comfort features. Most of them didn't even get painted. They just sprayed the bodies with primer to prevent rust, not including the hood and fenders, which were fiberglass, meaning they didn't need to be primered. Now, for some reason, this car was street legal, even though I genuinely believe that deep down, Dodge didn't want this car to pass regulations, because they actively tried to stop people from buying it by not giving it a warranty and constantly reminding potential customers how dangerous it was. They even went as far as telling people to not drive this street-legal car on public roads. Dodge ended up only building 80 units, making this car both rare and super cool. Number 73. In the early 2000s, Dodge had a really hard time selling the neon SRT4, mostly because their direct competition was the much better all-wheel drive Subaru STI. That's when some genius at Dodge suggested to put subwoofers in the car to appeal to teenagers who loved terrible music. But since they couldn't really afford to design it into the car, they just threw it in there. Yes, that's a factory-installed subwoofer. Number 74. The Dodge Dart was originally supposed to be called the Zip, but by some miracle, a human with functioning ears heard that name and decided to change it at the last minute. Number 75. Dodge's performance and supercharged models come with two keys, a black key that basically nerfs the car, and a red key which allows you to go full takeover crazy. Also, as far as we know, Dodge is the first and only brand to do this. Number 76. The Demon 170 has the words alcohol injected on its hood because it runs on E85. Dodge also chose to give its Demon logo yellow eyes because E85 is made from corn. Number 77. There's a small little Easter egg under the center console of the Ram pickups, showcasing the evolution of their trucks. Number 78. SRT is technically dead. In 2021, Stellantis dissolved the SRT division into its global engineering department. I mean, sure, they do still exist, but they will most likely be watered down even more in a few years, which is heartbreaking. Number 79. The stripes on the early Vipers were hand-painted, which was a manufacturing pain in the ass. That's why in 1997, Dodge stopped painting them behind the license plate, since it just took way too much time. Number 80. Dodge lied about how much power the Hellcat made. You see, Dodge originally said that the Hellcats made 707 horsepower, which was true at 6,000 RPM. But if you put the car in manual and held the gears to 6,100 RPM, you would make 717 horsepower. That's a 10 horsepower boost completely for free. Number 81. The Ford Mustang is considered by many to be the first compact muscle car, aka pony car. But that's not true. The first pony car was the Plymouth Barracuda, which was able to beat the Mustang to market by 2 weeks on April 1st, 1964. And that wasn't an accident. Chrysler did that intentionally to gain an edge over Ford. But as y'all might know, not a single edge was gained. Number 82. Like me, you have probably wondered why Dodge doesn't build all-wheel drive versions of the Hellcats and Demons. And most people would probably say it's because Dodge wanted their muscle cars to be crazy just like the old days. But that's not true. Dodge never made all-wheel drive versions of the Hellcat Chargers and Challengers because they literally couldn't, since their 8-speed gearboxes and 6.2-liter V8s were simply too big, leaving no room for a transfer case strong enough to run that much power. Number 83. The Ram SRT-10s all came with super nice leather steering wheel covers, so you could protect your wheel from being damaged by the sun. But the cover was way nicer than the wheel itself. That's why their owners ended up protecting the cover and not the $50 rubber wheel. Number 84. In 1971, the Dodge Challenger became the first ever pace car to crash in NASCAR, when Dodge dealer Eldon Palmer crashed into the photographer stand, injuring 29 people. It turns out Palmer lost control because NASCAR officials had removed the braking point he put on track during practice. Number 85. The Dodge Demon was so fast that the NHRA banned them because they require cars to have a full roll cage once they run a sub 10-second quarter mile. But instead of crying about being banned nationwide, Dodge wore it as a badge of honor, and they used it as a marketing tool. Number 86. If you hold down both paddles on the new Hornet, you will activate its power burst mode, which gives you 30 extra horses for a short time, so you could pass cars easier when you need to. Number 87. Headlight covers were all the rage in the 60s and 70s because it allowed automakers to have an uninterrupted continuous design. It was also considered as a luxury item back then. But in 1978, Dodge decided to completely abandon the headlight cover's only purpose by putting clear covers on the Magnum. Number 88. Making a good work truck in the 70s didn't require too much effort because the people who bought them only cared about reliability and dependability, which in turn meant that automakers only cared about one thing: price. That's why the 1974 Dodge Ram Charger only came with one seat as standard. Now, seats aren't a crazy expense to cut, especially for a bare-bones work truck. But what is crazy is not offering a roof. Seriously, none of the early Ram Chargers had roofs, which made selling them really hard, because who the hell wants a truck that could only be used in the summer? Eventually, Dodge received so many complaints from dealers and customers that they started producing soft tops for the Ram Charger halfway through its first production year, which could only be added as a dealer option, because Dodge refused to install them at the factory. Not sure why they picked that hill to die on, but I guess that's Dodge for you. Number 89. In 1957, Dodge built the refreshed Coronet with these cool quad headlights, which presented a big problem because quad headlights hadn't been approved in 3 states, meaning Dodge's gamble of build it and pray it gets legalized didn't pan out. That's why 2 of the 4 headlights were replaced with parking lights, since it would cost too much to redesign the front end. Number 90. As y'all might know, I love wagons, especially fast ones. That's why I have to talk about the Dodge Magnum, which I think looks like the ultimate family hauler. Now, it's no surprise that the Magnum came with a lot of different engine options, including the 6.1-liter HEMI. But what is surprising is that you could get it with all-wheel drive as well, because the chassis was big enough to support a strong transfer case. With that said, the Magnum sadly failed, mostly because Dodge's own SUVs were direct competitors. And after 3 short years, the Magnum was phased out and replaced with this terrible thing. Although it has made a comeback in the last couple of years, because people have finally figured out how cool it actually is. Especially since you can bolt on the Charger's front and rear end pretty easily, allowing you to build a modern Charger wagon. Now come on, that's sick! Number 91. The 1978 Dodge Omni was the first ever American subcompact car. Number 92. This is probably one of the worst cars ever built, and believe it or not, you're looking at a Challenger, a Mitsubishi Challenger. This disgrace of a quote-unquote muscle car was built in 1978 using the Mitsubishi Sapporo Galant, because Dodge didn't know how to make an economical car, which was a problem since fuel prices were sky-high in the 70s after the energy crisis. The second-gen Challenger came with 2 engine options, a 1.6-liter inline-4 that made 76 horsepower and a butt-clenching 105 horsepower 2.6-liter, both of which were front-wheel drive. And yes, of course, the car failed miserably. Number 93. The first HEMI engine was built in 1945, which was a 2,500 horsepower 16-cylinder built specifically for the P-47 fighter plane. Number 94. In the most ironic turn of events, the Paramount Network produced a show called Viper in the 90s, because as the writers were nearing the script's deadline, they realized they hadn't picked a name, so they decided to just name it after the car that would be used in the show, which was the Viper. Number 95. Dodge hosted a competition in 2022 where one person got the chance to be Dodge's chief donut maker, and the winner, Preston Patterson, was paid $150,000 a year to drive around in a Hellcat. That's it! That was his only job! Number 96. The 2013 Viper was technically not a Dodge, it was an SRT. Actually, it was SRT's one and only model, because at that time, Chrysler was trying to spin off SRT as its own standalone brand. But this move just ended up confusing everybody, and it was clear this wasn't gonna work out. so Chrysler quietly moved the Viper back into the Dodge lineup a year later. Number 97. The Dodge Caravan is the best-selling Dodge of all time, with over 14.6 million units sold. Number 98. All Hellcats and Demons have a valet mode, which limit the car to 300 horsepower, since apparently 300 horsepower is child's play at Dodge. Number 99. The Dodge Model 30 was the first car the Dodge brothers ever built. It was also the first car to be entirely built out of steel, which was a big deal back then, especially since its competitor, the Model T, was primarily constructed out of wood. Number 100. The 2025 Charger is the first EV muscle car ever built, which is such a shame. I mean, it looks so good. What a waste. Number 101. This is a not-so-subtle brag, but I don't care. Dodge actually commented on my Honest Dodge commercial, which was really cool. Although they didn't comment on my second commercial because I learned how to be honest and therefore stopped glazing them. I bet they're not gonna comment on this one either. And we're done. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.